Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to answer one of the common questions that I get, and that's, you push the barbell row or the pendlay row so much, why don't you set strength standards on it? Well, there's a whole host of reasons for that. First of all, this isn't a lift that we do 1 rep maxes on, and no one cares what your 5 or 10 rep max is as far as strength standards go. It's completely irrelevant. It's not how we measure strength. So since we aren't doing this for singles, I don't have a standard. You'll also get people go, well, why don't you give numbers over people to reach towards? Because usually when you're focused on progressive overload on the row, you cheat more and more and more. And I go through this with my own clients all the time. I get clients who they want to go heavier and heavier on their row, and before long, they're rowing more than me. Their back is smaller, they deadlift less, and they flop around like a fish and they think it's a pendlay row. Okay, till you put it on camera for them and you're like, look at this, it's not a pendlay row. Okay, and I've had people in my comment section say they didn't believe me on that. They're like, whatever, dude, I pendlay row over 300 pounds. And then they've filmed themselves and come back and said, okay, I'm not even going to upload the video. It's that bad. You were right. My torso probably travels 7 feet in the air on every rep. Well, that's an exaggeration. But they're like, it was excessively bad. And that's kind of the point, because what people need to look at, even for me, and I have pretty dang good back development. It's the one thing people say about me, including people who hate me. There are people who hate me who say, okay, I don't like this guy, but he does have a really jacked back. Okay, and that's fair. That's fair criticism of someone. You can point out things that they have that are positive while disliking a person, right? That's reasonable criticism. So I want people to think about how much weight you see me using with the axle bar. Using 155 pounds for sets of 15 for strict rows. That's my only lat work these days. What was I doing before I went over to rows again full time? I was doing 100 chin-ups every day with just my body weight. Every day, 7 days a week. I ran that experiment. My back is probably even bigger now doing the rows than that. And it's not that weight doesn't matter. Okay, it's not that weight doesn't matter. I set strength standards for stuff all the time. But what is it that those strength standards equate, right? I have a Big 5 strength standard. But the Big 5 strength standard isn't about setting your level of advancement. My Big 5 strength standard says if you can do all 5 of these lifts, you're probably going to look pretty reasonably jacked top to bottom, even while in your clothes, with good body composition while walking down the street. Okay, that's what that strength standard represents. Given that it is almost impossible to do a strict 1 rep max on a pendlay row, and if you did it, I promise you guys, what you think is strict probably isn't. Probably isn't. And we're not doing ourselves any favors. Hey, this is not a lift that flinging more weight around on is going to give you a better back or even give you the benefits you want. Why? Because when you stay low and you keep the cheating to the minimal, it actually involves more lat and more rear delt. Like, why are we doing rows? We're doing rows, first of all, to build lats, build rear delts, build mid traps. It's one of the other benefits. We train isometric strength in the posterior chain. That's one of the reasons a strict row like this off the floor can improve your deadlift quite a bit. We're training isometric strength. We're training you to learn to keep your posterior chain tight while rowing. It's not a good enough exercise for dynamic work for the posterior chain because you can't get enough weight. So if you're using hip drive and leg drive and everything to flop the weight up, what happens? You're using those muscles, but they're not working hard enough to really give them a true training response. So you're not getting any growth out of that. You end up doing, because of the torso angles involved, the more upright you get, the less lat, the less rear delt you work. It starts going more and more towards the upper trap. Okay, traps are not that hard to build, guys. That you need to use your rows specifically to build your upper traps, because that's what ends up happening. Now people say, well, couldn't someone just do chest supported rows? Well, you could, but you don't get the isometric benefits of the posterior chain. Now, could chest supported rows teach you how to strict row like this better moving forward? Sure, you bet they could. You bet they could. Because they'll actually teach you how much weight you can actually move with your lats, biceps, rear delts, mid traps. But you lose some of the benefits. You lose a lot of the benefits. And it's mainly so people don't do these correctly. They don't do full range of motion. They don't lock the arms out at the bottom. Notice when I'm at the bottom, my elbows turn out. If your elbows turn out when you touch the floor, your lats have to work a lot harder to break it off the floor. So realistically, let's put strength standards into perspectives on this. You really shouldn't be doing sets of less than 10 on this. You really shouldn't. We do different stuff for novice lifters because we know they're not going to have perfectly strict form. So we can do stuff a little different. I might run 5 protocols for them. But ultimately, they're going to have to learn how to do these correctly, get strict. But remember, the stricter you are, the easier you recover from these. Easier you recover, the more sets you can do. I do 15 to 20 sets of these every single week. Zero recovery issues. And when you factor in all the other work I do, that is a lot. This is one of actually my lower volume movements. Really, my lats get less volume than a lot of other stuff I do. But you recover easy when you go lighter. But realistic strength standards. How much weight do I use? 155. Okay. Now people say that axle bar is less than that. That looks like less. I'm like, well, I have another 15 pounds and tiny plates on the sides to make up the difference. So right now I do use 155. So that's a 15. You guys have seen me deadlift 615 pretty easy. Okay. What does that tell you? I do sets of 15 with a fourth of what I deadlift. All right. As far as clients go, my clients who deadlift in the 450 to 500 range, they usually do about 135 for sets of 10 on a strict row like this. Okay. So here's a question I'm going to ask. If you're doing 135 or more for strict sets of 10 on the Pendlay row and you don't deadlift in the 450 to 500 pound range, you're probably not going as strict as you think. You're probably not going as strict as you think you are. I bet you if you video, you're going to find that you're not as strict as I'm doing right here. And if you're doing 135 for strict sets of 10 on the Pendlay row and you don't have a big, giant V-taper, I promise you, you're cheating more than you think you are. So therein lies the problem we have. When people say, well, why don't we set a strength standard with this? How do you set a strength standard on a lift to where the moment people focus on moving more weight, the form completely breaks down and the exercise becomes less valuable from a programming perspective? That's a problem. Okay, you can bench a 1 rep max with great form, a true max. You can squat, deadlift, overhead press, a 1 rep max with full range of motion and good form. The moment you start piling weight on this exercise, it turns into a completely different movement. We can't do it. I mean, it's arguable that I even tell guys that I'll throw in a chin-up standard. And the chin-up standard is only there to make sure their back is big. And because the chin-up can actually regulate body fat. In other words, someone who's fat is going to struggle with a really heavy weighted chin-up more than someone who's leaner. So I have that thrown in primarily in the Big 5 strength standard. For what purpose? To make sure the person's not too fat. Because I make the statement that if you can hit all 5 of those big lifts, you're probably going to look pretty big and pretty jacked top to bottom to the average person while walking down the street in your clothes, and you're going to have a reasonable body composition. In other words, not many people who are over 20% body fat can do a weighted dead hang chin up with 100 pounds. There are some, but that's a rare individual. You're usually going to have to be at a reasonably healthy body fat to pull that off. There are exceptions. So that's why I have a strength standard in there for that. Hey, the row, the second we throw a strength standard on it, it becomes a big flopping cheat exercise. And we get less out of it when we do that. We get less out of it. And it's not because cheating reps might not still give you muscle growth. You might get them in slightly different places than you intended. It's that from a programming perspective, it's hard to do enough volume. Right? We can get the same amount of muscle growth, if not more, doing these stricter, recover from it easier, and do more total sets per week if we keep it strict. And we get the benefit of training our posterior chain for isometric strength. So realistically, this isn't a lift that I think people should be saying, oh, I need to keep stacking more and more weight on. No, you need to be creating fatigue with it, moving the bar quickly. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.